we're going to get back to the science of technology. Is clearly very excited about it. We're going to get back to that because I want to pause for a minute at the moment of transition. You were excited about it then, and you remain excited about it. You joined Flagship. You come on as CEO at Generate 2021.
That's right.
How aware were you that you were signing up for a post that was going to face the headwinds at that time? How aware were you that you were not from a scientific and excitement standpoint? Like you're coming with the energy, I get it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm the CEO of this new company. We're destined to solve all these problems. And then all of a sudden the whole space goes to shit.
Well, we were really lucky, right? I mean, if you think about the peak of the biotech market was February 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I started March of 2021.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think people realized that. I think people thought it was going to be a momentary blip for a while in 2021. During that period, we raised $370 million as part of our Series B financing, and we raised it from an extraordinary group of investors who shared our vision for the future promise of the technology. And so, as I think the downturn started to be fully realized, we were in a very strong position from a capital perspective. And,
did you kind of know that, like coming in, did you kind of know like, this is risky? There's always inherent risk in joining a biotech and leading a biotech, but we're, relative to the downward curve. We're in a good position.
To be honest, I think this whole idea of risk is grossly overstated, right? Every independent biotech endeavor has inherent risk. But if you think about the unmet need and the number of opportunities across the biotech ecosystem, failure is part of our model. And, I think as long as you're failing for valid scientific reasons. Sometimes the biology just is not going to work out. But if you're giving it a shot, there's going to be plenty of opportunity on the other side as long as you can, manage the business side of things well.
Right.
And certainly in 2021, if you thought about the biotech ecosystem, companies were springing up left and right. So opportunity was plentiful. So the risk of Generate not working out to me was, okay, I go do another opportunity.
Right.
And I think, you've seen that across this ecosystem for a long time. We're in a glorious era of scientific innovation. And, the science, you've heard this from, I'm sure, countless people, the science has never been better.
Yeah.
And so
what needs to be better to sustain, because we've seen over the course of the last 18, 24, 36 months, a lot of great science get shelved.
Totally.
Back burner, flushed.
Yeah.
So you hit on an important point. As long as you manage, you said, as long as you manage the business.
People are the rate limiter. It's not capital. Great teams are the rate limiter.
Okay.
So I think there's plentiful science, and not always will the science work out. You can have an extraordinary biological hypothesis. One of the things that you learn, and this is part of if you think about my time at Merck, it was like I got a PhD in this industry from Merck. And, the best scientific minds that we've ever encountered in life sciences are wrong 80 to 90% of the time.
Inherent in the business.
And I'm certainly not in that category, right? Failure is part of this model.
Yeah.
So to me, as soon as you acknowledge that, the way you manage around that to a certain extent is you build an extraordinary team, really bright people in a cross-disciplinary manner. If you have an opportunity, you find a portfolio or a platform. And part of what attracted me to the opportunity at Flagship and the opportunity at Generate was that it wasn't a single asset. Because again, I'm not smart enough to pick the winner. But if I have a portfolio, I can then manage the odds in a very different way.
Right.
Across 10 assets, the expected value starts to become greater than one. And in that sort of a world, I think it plays to the strengths of someone who has more of a business background. And, to me, the period of 2021, the biggest issue that we actually encountered was dilution of talent. You saw this skyrocketing number of biotech companies, of public biotech companies, of private biotech companies, of new startups. And that created position and title inflation across the industry. And the world doesn't need the 6th and 7th and 8th in class approach to the same problem.
Right.
There was actually too much, too many companies started. And unfortunately, I think we've had to go through a pretty rough downturn over the last couple of years. And we've seen a number of those companies struggle to sustain financing through that period. But over time, that raw scientific foundation is in place. There still is a lot of capital and certainly the assets that show real clinical proof are getting funded. And I think we'll see, this pendulum swings back and forth on, product versus platform.
Yeah.
Right. In 2021, it was in vogue to be a platform, largely because a platform technology in mRNA was saving the world.
Sure. Yeah.
In 2022 and 2023, it was much less in vogue to be a platform. Over time, that
although the RNA space still
there's still plenty of opportunity.
Still plenty of platform.
Absolutely. But those things will go back and forth in terms of sentiment. And so, I think, for me, for the industry, this period has been one where I think you rightly point out, some really great science will get caught up in this downturn. Some really great teams will get caught up in this downturn. Some, teams will get caught up in a valuation trap in some respects, where if you raised in 2021, 2020 at the peak of the market, major down rounds would be required to sustain organizations, and that's really hard. And so it's been really a rough period, but I think as we enter this year, certainly we now have had the 2 best months on record in the biotech industry over the last couple of months. That gives us a lot of green shoots as we enter 2024 to start to make a big difference again.
Yeah. You talked about the fact that you probably wouldn't have signed on for such an endeavor had it been a single asset company, and that makes perfect sense. It's logical. In the platform space or the platform play, what's sort of the, you got a single asset, you've got to hit milestones to make, you got to make the money stretch to the next milestone, get more money, it's kind of that leapfrogging. So I understand where the platform play gives you more to work with, but how does that change sort of the milestone picture, right? Like you've still got to produce something to reach a milestone. And
I think in terms of the executional rhythm that you want to instill within a company, I don't think it changes anything. There's just different milestones, right? I mean, I've got to be, I'm as accountable to my shareholders as a single product. So if I say I'm going to advance the technology on X, Y, and Z dimension, the compact in some ways I have with my investors is if I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And if I say I'm going to, have 2 programs enter the clinic this year, I've got to show progress on that front. And so, it gives you more levers. And sometimes those levers, when something, runs afoul, you can replace it with something else. So it gives you a bit more flexibility, a bit more optionality. But I think the executional rigor has to be the same, irrespective of whether you're in a one product company or a platform organization. I mean, that's what builds trust with your board, with other stakeholders, with your employees, for that matter.
You mentioned your 2021 Series B.
Yeah.
More recently, you raised the $280 million Series C. So I'm hoping for some insight on that, how you made that happen, what was key to it, how it was executed.
I think what was really key to it was when we look back at what we suggested we would do with our financing from our Series B, we delivered on milestones. So we had earned the trust of, all of our existing investors participate in our Series C. We had 16 Series B investors, and all 16 of them stepped into our Series C financing. And as you can imagine, given market conditions, everyone was in different situations.
Right.
They all decided to continue to, put the trust in, the team at Generate. And that was really, really meaningful to me, to the entire organization. At the same time, we were able to attract an array of different new investors in the process. It was much, the level of diligence that went into the round was night and day between 2021 and 2023.
Yeah, that's,
right.
To use an overused term, let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
That's one of the questions I had for you is, in more of a rudimentary way to put it, like what not even necessarily frustrates you about the way the deals are being done today, but what's different about it?
Well, I think, again, I think of these things in, sometimes we hit different poles. In 21, it may have been a little loose. In 23, it was probably, the orientation in 21 was, how do I find a way to deploy capital? In 23, the kind of orientation, the starting point for many investors was, I don't want to deploy capital, but I want to look.
Right.
And so you're almost finding reasons not to invest,
right,
versus finding reasons to invest. And listen, that within the round that we were able to put together, a big key of it was our ability not only to show the track record of execution, but also show the enormous promise over the next 24 to 36 months. And as we were in the process of raising, we had talked about having multiple programs, homegrown programs, enter the clinic. These are programs that were started by Generate a couple of years ago using the platform. The first one that went into the clinic was 17 months from concept to clinic. The second one was about 2 years. They're addressing major unmet medical needs. Their technology, their approaches that are very distinctive, for the individual targets that we've gone after. So, in many ways, we were able to show promise to both our existing and future investors that they said, this is a great time.
Is there a difference in your mind? Obviously there are a lot of variables behind the decision to invest in a company. Like Generate, any company for that matter. And you mentioned the importance of the support of your existing investor base. And then you mentioned that you got some new ones. Do you see any, lines of demarcation between what turned the new ones on to Generate versus those that you already had? Were the tire kickers more interested in the future? Were they happy to get on board with great investors who were happy to see results over the past 18 months? What was sort of?
Well, I think, every investor follows a slightly different formula, right? So anything we say is going to be somewhat of a broad generalization, but I think, the commonalities that I would pull out, right? One is, people usually back people. And, I've been really fortunate to be able to recruit a world-class team. And that team, I think, instills confidence in both new and existing investors, right? And
bet on the jockey, not the horse.
And I think there's an element to that. I think to the horse.
We don't want to discredit the horse.